Hello, my name is Rob Garner. I'm a computer programming instructor, and today I'm going to demonstrate how to add membership to a web form project. So I'm going to open up Visual Studio and start a new project. I'm going to call it Membership Demo and store it on my desktop. It'll be an empty web forms application. And we're going to add a database to our app data folder. And we're going to add a SQL Server database. I'm going to call it DemoDB. And double click it just to make sure that it opens up. You'll notice we don't have any tables yet. And I'm also going to look at its properties to see that it has a connection string. I also will look at tools and options, and we're going to look at the database tools under data connections, and we're going to need to know this for one of the following steps, which is what the SQL Service instance name is, and I'm just going to copy that. Now the next step is we need to add some tables to hold our membership information and login information and role information. And you could do this manually and hand roll your whole entire solution for membership, but Microsoft gives us some convenient tools to do this. And if you go to your Windows, Microsoft.NET framework, and then whatever version you're currently on folder, there's a program called ASP.NET Reg SQL. If you double click on that, you can run it in a setup wizard mode. If you run it from the command line, there are actually some things you can do to customize how it runs, but we're just going to run it in the wizard mode, which will install all the different all the different SQL Server tools into this database. And we have two choices: remove application services and configure for application services. We want all the application services, so we're going to pick the first choice here. And where it says server, you're going to paste the server instance name that you copied from we copied before. Once you do that, you can click on the drop down and it will populate it with the databases that are on that server. In this case, this top one is our database, so it's membership demo app data demo DB, so we can see that it's there. If we click next a couple times and then refresh our database here in the Server Explorer, we'll see that all the tables we need in order to do membership and personalization and users and profile and roles have all been added. So that's a convenient way of adding that functionality. So once we have our database configured for membership, the next thing we need to do is do some changes to our web config to permit to make this all work. One of the first things we need to do is under system.web, we need to add an authentication tag and specify what mode we want. There's several different ones, but we want forms. And then under forms, we're going to set a few attributes. The login URL will specify what the URL for the page that gets automatically called whenever a login is required. And we're going to pick all the protection levels, and timeout we'll set at 30 seconds. Path, or actually I think it's the path, we're going to pick that. For require SSL, we're going to set that to false. Ideally, you'd want that to be set to true, but for purposes of this demo, we're going to forego setting up SSL since this is an introductory demo. And typically, if you set SSL to false, they recommend sliding expiration so that you don't leave it in a vulnerable mode for the minimum time possible. And then we'll set cookie list to use device profile. Once we have our authentication tag completed, then the next thing we want to do is add a connection string. That will go under the configuration tag. And we're going to add one for our database. For the connection string attribute, the easiest way to get that is just look at the properties for your database, and you'll find that it gives it to you right here under connection string. You can just double click on it and copy it with Control-C and paste it in here. Now we could leave this like this, but if we move this solution around, the URL would change, and so rather than having to come in here all the time, Visual Studio allows us to do this. Between two pipes, just put data directory, and use this to use data directory to replace all the path right up to where your database is, which is demodb.mdf. So if you move this solution around, this will follow, data directory will follow where that database goes. Then the other tag we need to add, or the other attribute, is specify the provider or the provider name. In this case, it'll be the name of the class that's going to access the database for us, which is SQL client. And if you were using a default name for a database, we could just set that here. So if you were going to use a default, it would be something like this, but configure it so that we can use our own name. And under system.web, we're going to add a role manager. We'll set the default provider to customized role provider. And in the providers tag, we'll add one using the same name. And mostly so that we can specify, we're doing this so we can specify what connection string we want to use for our role manager. If you didn't do that, it would be looking for a local SQL server, it wouldn't find it, or it might create an additional database automatically, and we wouldn't want that. So in addition to a role manager, we want a membership provider, and we're going to set default provider equals customized. We'll name it customized membership provider. Under providers, under the providers tag, we're going to add a name equal to the name we used here. The type will be system.web. Security is the same, but it'll be SQL membership provider. And then the connection string will, of course, be the same. We also need an app settings element in our web config. And we're going to add a key. And we're going to set unobtrusive validation mode to false or to none. So that we don't have to load some JavaScript files, just to keep this example a little simpler. And that should be all we need for now for our web config. That this is working, we'll start off by adding a create user server control. That's kind of the first thing we would need anyway. So we're going to add a web form, and I'm going to call it new account. And from the toolbox, we're just going to drag in a create user control, and you'll find it underneath the login tag. And so and you'll notice that we have controls that do pretty much everything we need from a membership perspective. So we'll add this create user wizard. And you can see what it will look like. This allows someone to sign up for a new account. And we can run it actually right now. And there it comes up. We're going to add and it successfully created a user. So the question is, did it really create a user? Notice this continue button doesn't do anything yet either. And if I look at the tables, if I look under users, we can see, in fact, a user has been added. There's user 1. Of course, where's the password and that other information? That would be under membership. And there's the application, the user ID, the password. Password format, and then password salt. So this is a salted password. Microsoft View, plus other information for this user. So that completes this first part on how to set up your database for creating a user and how to create a create user control. Thank you very much.